It's always nice to talk to people at Joe Fest. It's always nice to run into people at a toy show and they give me their takes on the latest toy news. But I got a lot of questions at Joe Fest this past weekend about this new G.I. Joe Tomb Raider collaboration from Hasbro that's apparently going up for pre-order at the end of July after they announce it at San Diego Comic-Con or something like that. I don't really know how to easily answer the question because people were like, what's your take, Michael? What's your take? And my take has nothing to do with like, oh, I'm a huge Tomb Raider fan, which I am and have been a Tomb Raider fan since 1996. But that really has nothing to do with why the answer is complex. First of all, Tomb Raider, as you can see from just some of the stuff sitting next to me, Tomb Raider has a complicated relationship with action figure products. Tomb Raider will sell statues all day. You can get statues going all the way back to the beginning of the franchise. Action figures, on the other hand, though, have been very hit and miss. Playmates Toys tried it in the late 90s with a video game line, which is the one right next to me. And then, of course, they handled the Angelina Jolie movie line, which is also right next to me, and the doll over there. After that, though, there was kind of a abandonment of the property. There was a small company called Soda that tried again with the second Angelina Jolie film. That's the one in the lower middle. There were like 3 figures in that line. Maybe there was an exclusive repaint on one. It's hard to remember. None of these figure lines really set the world on fire. And part of it had to do with the fact that even though the Playmates movie line tried a little harder to bring in some other characters, it really didn't. It was like, here's a monster, and the rest of them are all Angelina Jolies. They're all Lara Crofts. And the original Playmates line was all Lara Croft. The Cradle of Life line was 2.5 Lara Crofts. One was an exclusive, I think, the third one. And then one monster. There really wasn't a lot there besides Lara Croft. NECA did figures for the games that came out in the 2000s. They had barely any articulation. They were all fragile. One of them is on the far lower right over there. They were all Lara Crofts. It was just Lara, Lara, Lara. There was no world build. There was no attempt at doing any kind of real action figure range with vehicles and playsets and whatnot. It was all low effort. It was all just, hey, the character's name is Lara Croft, but they call her Tomb Raider, so we're just going to make figures of her. The Barbie here in the center top row, that's pretty much the only thing that came out for the Alicia Vikander film. And again, that movie came out in 2018, so by that point, you're talking about a property that's had next to no success in the toy market since 1996, and we were well into the action figures aren't interesting to young people anymore. So Tomb Raider, by and large, has missed a window, especially for mainstream toy aisle products, toy aisle ranges. There's no way that you're going to be able to market this to children the way you can with even the Barbie movie. The opportunity to market this to kids was the 90s and then the Angelina Jolie movie. And in both instances, the efforts just whiffed. They just did. Part of that could be because Tomb Raider seemed to be, as a video game series, embraced more by, late teenagers and young adults at the time. And therefore, the whole toy thing just kind of skipped over that demographic because the property itself largely didn't land with that demographic. It's a franchise and a video game series that people end up appreciating after their toy years, not so much before. And we can see a lot of this paralleled in Indiana Jones. Indiana Jones was the progenitor to the Tomb Raider franchise. Tomb Raider is very much inspired by Indiana Jones. And Indiana Jones had the same problems at the toy aisle. When you have a title character that is the focus of the series, Lara Croft, Indiana Jones, Tomb Raider, Raiders of the Lost Ark. If you don't find success with a world build around that first adventure story, right then, it's probably never going to find its balance later. We saw what Hasbro's attempted to do with Indiana Jones in recent years. It's hard to believe it's been 3 years since Dial of Destiny, and we all remember how Hasbro's merchandise fell out for that. It was a half-hearted series of retro figures and a nonsensical series of Adventure Series 6-inch figures that didn't really go anywhere. And that's after, a legacy of Indiana Jones toys not doing well. Only 2 real world builds were attempted with Indiana Jones. There was the Kenner line in '82, and then there was the 2008 Hasbro range that came out around Crystal Skull. And even those failed to find escape velocity. So if you consider that Indiana Jones is far more of a household name than Lara Croft, even though Tomb Raider is one of the most famous video game franchises and video game characters, it's not a breakout household name like Indiana Jones was. Now imagine the hill it has to climb to try and get toys to market, right? I really think that the opportunity, the window of opportunity for Tomb Raider passed a long time ago for kids. So now we have to think about the adult market. My initial take on this action figure that's been announced from Hasbro that we've all been seeing, it's one figure. It's Lara Croft. Yes, it looks like it comes with all sorts of accessories and options to make it, whatever version of Lara you want for the most part. And they've also hitched it to G.I. Joe's brand wagon. But all of that to me speaks volumes. This is one of those rare moments where, you guys know pretty well at this point how I feel about Hasbro as a company. But it's Hasbro's reputation and its consistent patterns that we've observed over the years that you almost want to thank them for when it comes to sussing out this Tomb Raider announcement. Is Michael thanking Hasbro at this point? I don't mean it like that. I just simply mean that, there's a moment in Count of Monte Cristo where he's in prison and Richard Harris's character, writes down something to the effect of their neglect is our ally. And in this case with Hasbro, Hasbro's consistent neglect of properties, their consistent behavior in assortment rollouts and announcements, and how they go about doing things is our ally in determining everything around this Tomb Raider figure release. I have some background firsthand into this that also explains how we got here. The figure itself, we've only seen it in a rendering. There's actually a lot of difficulty when you go on the search engines in trying to find a legit image of the figure when it was announced, because so many of these people who are like Tomb Raider mega fans have gone out and done all this AI crap and spewed it out on the internet. So when you look up this figure, half the time you're looking at AI garbage. And some of these websites have picked those images up and they're using AI renderings of this figure rather than the actual figure. So the photo you're seeing is the actual figure as released by Hasbro. It's the only thing we've gotten. Anything else that you're looking at and you think, wow, that looks really impressive. It's not. It's an AI rendering from some irresponsible douchebaggy Tomb Raider collector site. They did some AI crap and that's what's dominating the search engines right now. So AI is once again creating confusion thanks to fanboys that don't know how to, be credible and authentic. So we've got this action figure, and it's from a company, Crystal Dynamics, that has already gotten in trouble in recent weeks because they've revealed that their next Tomb Raider game, which is a fourth remake, or it's a third remake. It's a third remake of the original game, the fourth version of that original game, and they revealed on Steam that they're using AI in the game. And the figure from that company has been made by Hasbro, which is another company that has openly and unapologetically said that they are using AI in their artwork and their design work and everything else for the future. They don't care. So you have two rather unpopular companies right now. One owns Tomb Raider and one has all the licenses. And they've both partnered up on this figure. Here's where my firsthand experience comes in. So I was approached by a toy company a few years ago, and they knew from my channel that I was really, really knowledgeable about Tomb Raider and Indiana Jones and whatnot. And they said they were pursuing the Tomb Raider license for action figures with Crystal Dynamics. They were in the process of doing so. And they asked me if I would sort of help them consult on this. And I said, sure. And there was talk like, if all this goes through, then, like we might want to talk to you about being a brand manager or whatever. It never got that far. So, but that just to give you an idea of, it was like, well, this is really interesting because I love this property and it hasn't been done well in the toy market, and maybe I can contribute something valuable to that. So they asked me if I could help them with giving them some intel on Crystal Dynamics situation. Crystal Dynamics had just been sold off by Square Enix, the makers of Final Fantasy. Square Enix had purchased them years before. And so Crystal Dynamics and Eidos, which was the original parent company of Tomb Raider when it was under Core Design. Core Design were the creators of Lara. Eidos and Crystal Dynamics were sold off by Square Enix, and then they got bought by Embracer Group. If you've been following the drama with Embracer Group the last few years, that company has had all kinds of problems. They've been laying off all kinds of people. They tried to be this like Hoover vacuum that just sucked up all the different video game IPs. And they had all kinds of, entrepreneurial hedge fund money or something. Like it was just a bunch of millionaires and multimillionaires and a billionaire that got together, and they had all the money but no sense. So lately, over the last few years, they've been in managerial chaos because they now own all these IPs, but they've been hemorrhaging money and the business model is imploding. So they've been shuttering all these companies that they've bought. They've shuttered a bunch of in-development games that people were looking forward to that would have been fine, like big sequels for IPs and stuff. They would have been fine had they not been bought by Embracer, but then they were, and then Embracer shuttered them. And it's been absolute chaos. It's been a nightmare. So Embracer at the time wasn't going through that. They were the new owners of Crystal Dynamics, who makes all the Tomb Raider games since 2006, 2007. Their first game was Tomb Raider Legend, and they've been making all the games ever since. Crystal Dynamics was still making licensed statues through companies like Weta, and they were always looking for a new licensor to help them keep Tomb Raider afloat, because in 2018, that was the last time we had a game, Shadow of the Tomb Raider. It was either 2016 or 18. It's one of those. And the game didn't really do all that well. And officially right now, even though they've announced this third remake of the original, they're still in between games. The latest mainline game is still years away. So in the background, they were trying to find ways to keep Lara afloat in the pop culture zeitgeist. And they said, hey, we're going to put Lara Croft in Fortnite, and we're going to put Lara Croft in this mobile game. I think it was Hero Wars or something like that. And we're going to give Lara Croft her own mobile game with, all of the microtransaction crap and everything like that. And we're going to announce this animated series on Netflix because that's a good idea and it's going to take years and years to get done. And we're going to cast Haley Atwell in the role, even though she should have been live action Lara Croft back in 2012. But hey, we can't do that. But don't worry, we'll make her the voice of Lara in this very mediocre animated series. They were kind of open for anything and everything. And having just come out from under Square Enix, they were also ready to reestablish themselves and find success for this brand. The point is, they were fresh out from under Square Enix and they were looking to reestablish themselves with that brand. And I was tasked by this toy company with giving them that intel and also coming up with proposed assortments while they worked out all the legalese. So I put together all of these potential assortments, including convention exclusives like a San Diego Comic-Con exclusive. It was going to be a legacy line that was going to go through Lara's entire history. And our pitch was, this is going to be the toy line that keeps everybody in the fan base really excited while they wait for the next mainline game, which we know is in development. So this will help you bridge that gap and everybody will be really excited to collect these, and it will keep Tomb Raider interest alive during this kind of dry spell where there's no new game. And so I came up with all of these assortments, proposed waves and proposed exclusives, going all the way back into the entire history of Tomb Raider. For example, one of them was a 2-pack San Diego Comic-Con exclusive that would have been Lara in her Tomb Raider 2 training gear with Winston the Butler, and it would have been a diorama box that would have included the freezer that you can infamously lock him in that game's training level. So we sent all this to them, and we had proposed exclusives that were, editions of the figures that would have been signed by every notable Lara Croft voice actress. So like you'd have a Part 1 Tomb Raider figure that was going to be signed by Shelley Blonde, and then you had a Part 2 that would be signed by Judith Gibbons, and so on and so forth. And those would be like, special ones as well. They'd have something a little different about that figure, and it'd be like a signature edition or something like that. All of this aimed at the adult premium figure collector and Tomb Raider enthusiast, all of whom skew older. They loved it. They thought it was awesome. The praise came in and they said they couldn't wait to discuss it further. We were all really excited. I felt pretty good about the fact that I had delivered what seemed to be a home run. And then I found myself on actual firsthand calls, video chats with people from Crystal. First, it was the story group, and then it was the marketing group. In the midst of all this, MGM and Amazon kind of formed up and were getting their ducks in a row. And they announced the Phoebe Waller-Bridge Tomb Raider television series, the live action one that's currently being filmed with Sophie Turner. But this was still years ago. It hadn't gone anywhere yet. It was just an announcement. So they'd announced that. They'd announced the update on the animated series, which was still a year and a half away, whatever it was. It'd been in development hell. They were announcing all these things like the mobile game and, all this kind of stuff. In other words, not the mobile game for Tomb Raider, but her being in another person's mobile game. So you had all this stuff going on. There was a Call of Duty thing that happened with her. There was a Call of Duty Lara that got announced as well. And so there were all these like Tomb Raider cross promotions that were suddenly stacking up. So this MGM Amazon show had been announced and everything was kind of blowing up for Tomb Raider in the news cycle. And we thought, okay, well, this is a good time then for us to, work with them on this figure line. I had the calls with the marketing people and the story group. story group was first. And again, a number of these people have since been let go because Embracer is no better than any of these other tech companies. But remember, we had gone through the entire legacy of the character, and we had also adhered to their requirements in their massive, story Bible for merchandising. And all of the history of Lara that was video game related was up for grabs. So we thought, hey, they liked this pitch for this legacy line, and we've got the assortments proposed and all this kind of stuff. This should be a great conversation. Well, these people are all from San Francisco, and all the cliches about San Francisco culture came into play here. All of a sudden, we were met with a story group that, despite us having been told that they had seen and loved all the stuff that we had proposed, suddenly their story editor guy, who'd been on the franchise for too long, he was visibly reticent to do anything related to the legacy games at all. Crystal Dynamics has a very healthy and skewed self-loathing of the Lara Croft character. Even though the Legend, Anniversary, and Underworld games are the most sexualized Lara that's ever been, and those were Crystal Dynamics games, they see Lara's entire pre-2013 legacy as one of embarrassment and being cringeworthy and beneath them at this point, even though this guy worked on those games. They've self-deluded themselves into believing that they're not part of it. So they're trying to walk this line where they're like, yeah, we acknowledge, the amazing character that she is and in all of her past games. But when it comes down to brass tacks, when you're in front of us, we're suddenly not wanting to do that. And we said, well, we're doing all of it. Like, we're not just doing 1996. We've proposed Tomb Raiders 2 and 3 and Angel of Darkness and, this and that. And we've got, pairings and trios and assortments for all that stuff. And they were telling us that they wanted us to only focus on this idea for this unified Lara. I remember saying afterward in a debrief session, I was like, it really doesn't make any sense. I said, it doesn't sound like it's in the best interest of any toy company to go out there and put out a version of the character that isn't going to be seen in a game for a really long time. The only thing they've put out is like one promotional image, and they say this is our unified Lara Croft. And why would they have all the other stuff in their story Bible if they're not going to ever let anybody use it? Because that's very misleading. So we kind of ran into a problem with Crystal Dynamics right there. It was there were mixed signals going on where it was, we love this stuff. We love the fact that it's, the first time anybody clearly has a working knowledge of Tomb Raider and our brand, and these exclusives and these figure assortments are amazing, and let's talk it through. Let's talk about them. And then all of a sudden, the very first meeting, it was obvious reticence and hesitation, to the point where the head of the story group was getting visibly flustered and frustrated while we were just trying to talk to the guy. He was hell-bent on this unified idea, even though the fan base had largely been split over the past few years because Crystal Dynamics had been so adamant that it wasn't going to acknowledge the past versions of Lara anymore. So then we had the marketing call, and there were a lot of people on that marketing call that I recognized from their social media platforms because I've been following them for several years, which was helpful when I had to initially help out this toy company figure out what the lay of the land was. I was already kind of familiar. And some of those people have sadly been let go since then. We get on this call, and if you can believe it, the discussion was worse. And it was more about these weird business ideas that they had for the character as a merchandisable product. They had just brought in this new marketing guy who used to work for PlayStation. PlayStation, the company that just turned around and said it's going to delete the entire Studio Canal digital movie library and it's not going to give refunds to all the people who bought movies digitally on the Sony PlayStation Plus platform or whatever it was for that. Too bad, so sad. The same company that just announced today that it's going to kill all physical media releases of games in 2028. It's a great company to get, brought up in and come from, like PlayStation. They're winning. So this guy who was a mix of PlayStation culture and San Francisco culture, which, just put my head in the oven at that point. Like, very smug, lo-fi smartass. His shit didn't stink. Like he was smarter than everybody in the room. And he started patronizing the people from the toy company. I couldn't believe it. Like I've been in corporate America with Fortune 50 and Fortune 100 companies at the table with these CEOs and stuff at these meetings and things of other industries, and so I know corporate culture pretty well. And I couldn't believe how just out there he was about this. Like he made it very clear to us that they weren't going to announce an action figure line ahead of time. But they admitted they knew nothing about selling toys. They knew nothing about marketing toys. They said that as well. They said, we don't know anything about toys. But then when we were discussing, well, we announce it, we show, things to get people excited. This was a proven company, okay? The toy company. I'm not going to give their name because I don't want to speak for them because I'm speaking for myself, all right? But they were a proven company. This wasn't like they were a startup. All right, like they were proven. All right, they were a quantity, a known quantity. Suddenly, these marketing people are like, "Yeah, we're not going to do that." So basically, what they wanted was they wanted us to make all the toys and have them ready, and then announce it, and 2 weeks before or 3 weeks before, and just hope that the customers would be there. Which is not the way modern toys work, especially modern adult collectible toys. And when we presented them with the data from this company's own successful experience, the guy shot back and he was like, well, do you have any numbers, any metrics from other companies? The marketing people and the story people were immediately hostile to the licensee who had been brought in enthusiastically initially. They were immediately stonewalling us. And we couldn't figure out why. But I tell you all this to say that ultimately, while that didn't happen, it was a proposed, intended, full figure series world build. Now, there weren't any vehicles or play sets, but it was, from an action figure perspective, it was going to be the most comprehensive Tomb Raider legacy franchise action figure line ever proposed. And it didn't happen. And it didn't happen in large part because Crystal Dynamics as a company culture is extremely difficult to work with. Like, they kept saying in these meetings, well, we're trying to make sure that we just want to protect Lara, and her brand. And it's like, protect her? And I'm going to say this. I mean it this way. They've been whoring her out to every single thing they could the last few years. Like Call of Duty, Fortnite, Hero Wars, or whatever that mobile game was. They were jamming her in everything. They weren't protecting her brand. And then on top of that, they were announcing things well before they ever came out. They announced that animated series and it was still years away, So they were feeding us a line of bullshit is what they were doing. And it made no sense. And it didn't help that Mr. PlayStation was like so super smug about all of it. I can't speak for the toy company that I was helping out. I can't speak for them or speak of them. These are my opinions alone. But I was sort of aghast. I wasn't surprised at Crystal Dynamics turning out this way, because I had told them, like the toy company ahead of time. I said, Crystal Dynamics is not known for being very well loved, by the Tomb Raider legacy fandom. They've made a lot of mistakes. But I never would have expected it to have gone that badly, and especially with somebody new having been brought in. That blew me away. You'd think you'd bring somebody in to help fix things, not make things worse. So nothing comes of that, and probably for the best, because who wants to get in bed with those people? And now they've announced this G.I. Joe Tomb Raider thing. So going all the way back to what I said about it's a good thing Hasbro is what they are, because it allows us to zero in on how it got here. We've seen how Hasbro half-heartedly handled Indiana Jones, okay? Magnify that legacy by 100 and you get the Tomb Raider situation with toys and action figures. It's so much worse than Indiana Jones in that regard. I don't have any way to verify this at all. I'm not even basing this on rumor. I'm just thinking about it out loud. I have a very hard time believing that Hasbro proactively went after the Tomb Raider license for one figure. I think it's more likely, given what I know firsthand about Crystal Dynamics, I think it's more likely that they decided to cold pitch toy companies to see if any of them would bite. Because the toy companies that had good intentions and had good track records, I'm certain they had the same experience that I did. They can't get anywhere with this company. So if I was a betting person, I would say it was Crystal Dynamics that reached out to Hasbro. And Hasbro's response was smartly, and I'm giving Hasbro credit for being Hasbro in this moment, all right? I know that's pigs are going to fly and hell is freezing over, but in this one instance, I'm really glad that Hasbro is what Hasbro is, because Hasbro probably is looking at them and going, sure, we'll do a figure of Lara, and we're going to put it under the G.I. Joe brand umbrella. They know the only chance this thing has is being part of the G.I. Joe classified collection. Tomb Raider has a very spotty history with action figures, and Hasbro as a megacorp, which already won't even take a full chance on Indiana Jones, they're not going to take a huge risk on this. My point in telling you all this is Hasbro, they are going to do this, and I'll be shocked if they go any further. All the fans that are sitting there saying, oh, this is going to lead to a big action figure line, I don't think so, because it never does. Especially not with these big companies. It never does. Now, there's the possibility that Sophie Turner show is going to be amazing. That possibility is remote, but there's always a chance it becomes really popular with somebody. And if that's the case, there's a very, very, very small chance that they'll sell toys based on it, but I doubt it. How many streaming series get toys aside from Stranger Things? Everyone's all gaga about this figure. And yeah, it's nice that a decent action figure is coming out based on Tomb Raider finally. That actually has articulation and, knees that bend and all kinds of stuff. Because very few of them actually have. It's crazy. Over 30 years, very few of them have. But this is a 30th anniversary salute to a franchise that from the merchandising perspective, and especially from toys, has been mismanaged for decades. And even in its 30th anniversary, even with a television show coming out that's been promoted over and over again, all they could get out of Hasbro was a G.I. Joe cross promotion that's going to be sold online.
Who sits here?
We can be partners and go for the big prize.
Yes, but who sits here?
It's an incredible dream.
I don't think you sit here, do you?